share my screen here. If you are not aware of my blog, this is not cool. Think.blog is the URL on that, and much of the material, or some of the material that you'll see tonight, is taken from the blog. I've also developed a lot of this in regular Zooms that I do with farmers and landowners across the state of Michigan who are interested in clean energy and having that conversation. And so that's been a big part of where I'm placing my time these days. Um, just a little, start out with a bit of levity. We had as you know, we had uh, an amazing North Korean style parade in Washington, D.C. The other day, and although the meteorologists were forecasting rain, it didn't exactly pour, and so the president considered that a victory and took the opportunity to ask whether those scientists know anything at all.
Last night was a tremendous success with a fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful. And so I asked if they gave it 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night, but it was beautiful.
Okay, just to review where we are, this is a graph, and I'm not going to throw very many graphs at you, but this is a record of what climate models have shown over the last 70 years or so. The blue band is the range of model projection results for global temperature over time. The black line is the mean of all of those projections, and the red line is actual measured global temperatures. So actually, the climate scientists are pretty much dead on. So we shouldn't get maybe if we have a cool year or two, we no need to get too happy. And if we have an extra special warm year, you don't necessarily panic, but things are warming as projected and somewhat accelerating. So yeah, the scientists have been spot on, which makes me, over the last several months, I've been thinking about this clip from Jurassic Park. Remember that movie?
Maybe it's the power trying to come back on.
What is that?
So the sounds that you hear are the approaching Tyrannosaurus Rex in the movie, if you didn't see it. Um, and it's a little bit like what we've been seeing in the last 4 or 5 years here in Michigan and around the world as well. You may remember the tornado that hit Gaylord May 21st of 2022. Gaylord doesn't even have an alarm or a warning system for tornadoes because why would they? It's Gaylord. But now they are getting F2 tornadoes, which in this case killed several people who didn't get the warning in time. The following spring, we had record wildfires in Canada, and people were choking on smoke all over the east, certainly all over the state of Michigan. And I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people, but many folks probably thought it was a one-off, a fluke. Um, the following year after that, we had our first ever tornado emergency on May 7th, of that year. Um, my friend Dr. Jeff Masters says that although we don't have a trend numerically for tornadoes in Michigan, although stay tuned, this year's been pretty active. We are seeing tornadoes at locations and times of year that we're not used to seeing them. And that's true across the Midwest. And then this spring, uh, you might have found yourself blocked from crossing the Mackinac Bridge because giant chunks of ice were falling off the sides of garage doors. And we had that incredible ice storm that was really part of a much larger system that extended all the way down into the heart of the country. And it was a system that just sort of hung and hung and hung. And in the south, it was dropping rain, and here it was dropping ice. And you can see the damage that was being done to infrastructure. Some of you, I'm sure, lived through it and probably know all the more vividly what that was like. But this video from the DNR was very striking to me. This is from the Pigeon River forest. I've never seen anything like this. But what you can notice is all these dead trees and all of the trash that is now on the floor of the forest. That is it's way more than anybody is going to be able to clean up. So for probably decades into the future, we're going to have an elevated risk of wildfires every time we have a dry spell. And that's an example of how one climate extreme can kind of feed into another and amplify going forward. And then this spring, just a few weeks ago, we had the return of the smoke and the bad air. And so, if there was any doubt about whether this is going to be a continuing pattern, that should be put to rest because we've been seeing record wildfires in Canada again, and those fires are moving eastward. We're starting to see the fires now in the Carolinas, in New Jersey, places like Tennessee, and Michigan is not immune from this as we get into warmer and warmer temperatures, which will dry things out much faster when we do get a warm spell. Just this week, we had a National Weather Service issued Canada's first ever, or excuse me, Alaska's first ever heat advisory. And just a few days later, the first ever severe thunderstorm warning in Juneau, Alaska, which almost ripped the giant cruise ship from its moorings because the winds were so violent for a few minutes there. So, like the footsteps of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, we keep seeing things. My ears always perk up when I hear a news report and somebody says, "Boy, I never saw anything like that before." And we're going to be seeing a lot of firsts from here on out. Just this morning, a Category 4 hurricane struck southwest Mexico, Eric, and no Category 3 or stronger hurricane has ever been recorded in Mexico before July. So this is a first. It's Category 4, and it was one of the fastest developing hurricanes. The speed went up, the wind speed went up by 80 miles per hour over the course of the 24 hours or so before it made landfall. So rapid intensification is something that we expect to see with more and more of these storms, and it does not bode well for the hurricane season going forward. Some of you have seen this before, but I'll just review it again. Consumers Energy in a recent earnings call pointed out that over the last 20 years, we've seen an increase in the frequency of storms and higher wind speeds. We're clearly seeing the effects of climate change. They're upping their design standard for their transmission. It used to be to withstand 40-mile-an-hour winds. Now it's been changed to 80 miles an hour, so we're all paying for that. And this is Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota. And I'm going to show you about a 2-minute clip here of her talking to Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. about the elevated risks to homeowners and from the price of home insurance as more and more extreme events create more and more costly damages for insurance companies.
The rising cost of homeownership is a big challenge for our constituents, for Americans. And one of the big pressures, there are many, but one of the big pressures is the rising cost of home insurance. In Minnesota, families, seniors are struggling to manage a nearly 40% increase in home insurance rates. We've seen this over the last 7 years or so. And I know, Chair Powell, that you've told this committee in the past that that rising cost of buying insurance for your home has been a source of inflation as we've been trying to manage inflation. Now, I don't know anyone who doesn't see this crisis of rising insurance rates as being caused by extreme weather events. We've seen massive flooding in the southeastern United States. We've seen flooding in Minnesota. We've seen fires in the Mountain West in California. I mean, these are climate-related events. Then that's not a political position. That is just a fact. So, we've got banks that of course, require, understandably, that a homeowner provide insurance as a predicate for getting a mortgage. So there's a big question about what's going to happen when insurance becomes unaffordable or in some parts of the country just literally not available, and what impact that would have on the mortgage markets, on the value of American homes. Just last week, a new analysis from First Street showed that overall, the value of U.S. real estate could be reduced by $1.4 trillion, colleagues, over the next 30 years due to unaccounted for climate risk. That's the cost, the risk of not being able to afford home insurance because of these extreme weather events.
We're seeing the same thing, which is both banks and insurance companies are pulling out of areas, coastal areas and things like that, or areas where there are a lot of fires. So what that is going to mean is that, if you fast forward 10 or 15 years, there are going to be regions of the country where you can't get a mortgage, there won't be ATMs, there won't, the banks won't have branches and things like that. Right. That's a possibility coming up down the road.
So some pretty serious economic consequences. I guess I wanted to make the point that we're vulnerable here in Michigan, we're vulnerable here in the upper Midwest. And it's hitting you in the pocketbook right now. And we could go on for a while and kind of marinate in sort of climate doom and gloom. And I'm happy to do that with anybody that wants to. But what I really kind of want to move forward on is the solutions that we're working on. And because it's just, at this point, there's really nothing else that we should be doing. There's nothing more important. And your group in particular is pretty sophisticated in your awareness of climate change. So I don't think we need to get, we can have Q&A and we can talk all we want to about that. But I really want to let you know about what's happening in Michigan and beyond in terms of this energy transition, because we are at a hinge of history right now. And all of us that live in the Midwest, all of us that live especially in or near rural areas need to get involved in this, because this is where we will turn this around or not. And it really is up to us, as daunting as that seems to be. And you all know that solar and wind are without doubt the lowest cost ways of putting new electricity on the grid. And for that reason, more than 90% of new U.S. power plants in 2024 were solar, wind, and batteries. Only small amounts of gas and nuclear. There's a lot of reasons for that. And we have seen in the previous Trump administration that solar and wind have been growing exponentially and continue to grow exponentially, although they're really pulling out the stops this time around to the fossil fuel industry to see if they can put a stop to this, which is a threat to their business model. And I'll review again that the the talking points that we hear about clean energy are often that it's unreliable or expensive. But we know from this survey by U.S. News and World Report that in the top 10 most reliable grids, they took each state individually and measured the reliability of their electrical grids. And in the top 10, there are four states with very high penetration of renewables that were extremely reliable. Nebraska, 37%, mostly wind. South Dakota doesn't really count because nobody lives there, but 84% renewables, a lot of hydro and a lot of wind. Nevada, 37% mostly solar. But Iowa is very interesting. Iowa, by this point, is above 70%, overwhelmingly wind, but more and more solar. Michigan has 85% plus coal, gas, and nuclear. And so if we believe the talking point, then Michigan should have one of the most reliable grids in the country. But in fact, we come in at number 43 in this survey. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the takeaway is that having a reliable grid is less about the type of generation you have and more about having a mix of generation and coordinating it and having the intention of moving toward reliability and spending whatever it takes to get to that reliable state. And we know that's true from other countries internationally as well. And insofar as the cost, and I just checked these not too long ago, in Iowa, where they have more than 70% renewable energy, they're paying a little more than 13 cents a kilowatt hour, according to the Energy Information Agency, for residential electricity. In Michigan, we are paying almost 19 cents. So we are paying 35% more for electricity that is much less reliable and much dirtier. So what's wrong with this picture? And so we don't need to apologize as advocates for clean energy for anything. We're trying to make electricity more reliable and cheaper for everybody. But there are those that would push back against that. And so I've been spending a lot of time going around the state and talking to people like Dave Kraft. Dave is a farmer in Montcalm County, Michigan, where there's been a big fight about potential wind farm there. They are starting to get some solar there, and we're really happy to see that. But I asked Dave about the experience that he had when he first signed a lease for a possible wind turbine on his land. This would have been 5 years ago. And here's what he said.
I signed the lease, and that's when all hell broke loose. I started being called all kinds of things, and it was all over the internet. They told all kinds of lies, and all kinds of things went on. That same year in December, right here where we're at now, my nephew was working on putting the plow mounts on his truck. Guy pulls up the end of the driveway just before Christmas and says, if wind turbines go up around here, we're going to kill everybody in your family. And my nephew was so shook up, his wife says, I'm moving out with the kids. I'm not going to stay here anymore. He says the guy was all talk. He didn't tell me for 5 days. I says, why not? He says, because I know what you'd have done. And I says, you get a license number? He says, it wasn't wearing a license plate. He says he didn't know who it was, but he figured it was within the county. Because this is where the hotbed is.
Sure.
All the trouble, and you got these people that are just crazy about it. These people are being manipulated. And it is through the internet, and I hate to say they're that stupid, but I think they're that gullible. Some of these people, I've known them all their lives. If I live to be 150, I'll never speak to them again.
So Dave's story is on the extreme side, but I have dozens and dozens of interviews with farmers telling basically a story of abuse, harassment, threats, and other kinds of unpleasantness when they wanted to have solar or wind on what they regard as their private property. And in many cases, in order to keep their farm in business, but to diversify their income so they can keep their farm in the family. And these folks are almost to a person very conservative Republicans. These are people that voted for Trump. These are some of the reddest parts of the reddest counties in Michigan and across the Midwest. And having these conversations, I think, first of all, we should know that there are people that can be our allies in and are critical allies in helping to move more clean energy out there. But they're people that don't agree with us on everything. So we have to be smart as advocates and learn how to open conversations with people on areas of mutual interest. As much as climate change is woven right into my cells, I never go to one of these townships and start a conversation on climate change. I start a conversation based on property rights, based on revenues to the community, better schools, better roads, better fire protection, better police patrols, uh, and pushing back against some of the misinformation, various kinds of misinformation, and on energy security, national security. These are all issues that resonate. And I would say that even if climate change were not an issue, that these are conversations we should all learn how to be having because we have an incredibly powerful industry that is bent on tearing us apart using some of the most sophisticated cyber tools that have ever been imagined, algorithms that know us better than we know ourselves. And this is what we're up against. And the only uh, way to push back that I know of is to figure out how to talk to people and people that with whom we have a number of disagreements, but we got to do it. Now, the major alternative, the major competitor to clean energy, to solar and wind, is natural gas, at least at the present moment. But we're at a point where natural gas prices are rising, and it's hard to see historically where those price rises are going to stop because there's a number of forces that are pushing them up. Um, not not the least of them is the tariff that I think is still on for Canadian natural gas, which is relevant to us here in the upper Midwest and the Northeast because we're the ones that rely on a fair amount of Canadian natural gas. So that's going to cost us all a lot of money. And this is a very, very important video. I've got two or three of them that are really, really critical here, and I want you to listen carefully. There was an event, it's an annual event, happened a couple months ago in Houston. It's called Sarah Week, and it's basically Lollapalooza for energy tycoons. And so anybody that's energy gazillionaire or billionaire or whatever shows up in Houston to rub shoulders and exchange information, and the media shows up and they talk to a lot of these guys. And I put together a mashup of the things that they were saying about what they're seeing in the energy markets. And this would have been just a little bit before the first round of big tariffs were applied. So bear that in mind. But listen carefully to what these guys say, noting that most of these guys, with maybe one exception, are not just Trump voters, but probably Trump donors. So bear that in mind.
Very quickly, natural gas, nearly $5. That's a high input cost for you with a very heavy natural gas fleet. What does that mean for you and for residential customers?
What happens when natural gas prices go higher, electricity prices track higher because natural gas sets the price of electricity in America over 90% of the time.
This is natural gas prices today. They're up over 10%. Yesterday, they were up over 8%. I've been telling you guys for about 3 weeks this is about to happen. It's going to get worse long term. We may see some short-term dips. Long term, it's going to get worse.
So tariffs on energy might drive up natural gas prices, as an example. That would impact negatively residential rates for both electricity and gas, of course.
And so when you think about gas-fired generation, one of the things that has happened there is that we have a ton of demand for gas-fired turbines, which has hurt the ability to deliver them on time and has increased the cost. So if I want to build a gas-fired generation facility tomorrow, nobody's built more than we have in the last 20 years. I can't get it online till 2030 or later, and it's 3 times more expensive because demand has forced the price of the turbine up and the labor to build it. Because it's really hard to find skilled labor right now. They're all building data centers.
One thing that we use a whole lot of is steel. And we'll have to see how this washes out with steel tariffs. And we've been in contact with our suppliers, and that's another thing that can add a great deal of cost to what we do. All the pipe that goes in the ground and the tubulars that we use, that's permanent.
How long to build a power plant today?
Oh, easily 3 to 5 years. And
Minimum,
that's if you're
right?
ready to rock and roll, right? If you're not ready, you're talking about a longer term thing.
What you're saying is that if you wanted to build a natural gas power plant, costs have soared from even 2 years ago.
That's right.
Because the manpower and labor, whatever, all those things. So then does that make solar? You're the biggest renewables generator in the world. Does that make solar? Does that make wind more cost effective against gas?
It makes it more cost effective against gas, but more importantly, it's really the only generation that's available right now to meet the power demand that's here today. Folks can't wait to get electrons on the grid. They need power right now. If they have to wait, it's just going to chase the price of power up, and we're going to put all of our eggs in the gas-fired generation basket.
Gas-fired generation, for example, under the framework agreement we announced today, won't be ready until 2030 or beyond at scale, and then nuclear, beyond that, because it's a lot of it's first of a kind technology.
Currently, we're producing about 106 billion cubic feet of natural gas a day. Our consumption, though, when you include exports, is 115. There's more going out than is coming in, and prices are already getting up there. As long as there's more coming out than there is going in, they will continue to rise. It is an impossibility that they won't. Why are we exporting so much natural gas? Because it's $14 in Europe. It's $4.50 here, $14 in Europe. So they're selling it where it's $14.
Okay, so key points there. You heard him say the price of electricity is set by natural gas 90% of the time. So if anybody tells you that renewable energy is driving up the price of energy, that person is uninformed. They don't know what they're talking about. Secondly, as the price of gas goes up, it's going to hit both residential and industrial. So it's not just the price of heating our homes, it's the price of everything that's made with electricity, because 40-some% of our electricity is generated with gas. So it's inflationary as heck. This reliance on gas, and for Americans to be competing with people who are willing to pay 4 or 5 times more than we are, is inflationary for as far out into the future as we can see, as long as we are heavily reliant on gas. And now we have this was recorded before the really heavy tariffs. Now we're looking at 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. And So everything to do with drilling for natural gas and piping natural gas around, and certainly uh, building liquefied natural gas terminals, hugely expensive in the steel and aluminum content. So we don't even know what the impact of these tariffs are going to be on prices going forward, or even on the industry's ability to do what they say they're going to do as far as exporting. Uh, this you just saw John Ketchum there, and he's the CEO of NextEra, which is a huge electrical generator. He is back in the news just in the last week at another conference and kind of doubling down. He says it will take now, he says, 7 years to get new gas-fired power plants online. And when that gas shows up, it will be 3 times more expensive than it's ever been. And if we take renewables off the table, as is now the policy of this administration, we are going to have a real power shortage problem in this country. So that is what uh, uh, chief executive officers whose job it is to generate power, that is what they're saying. The Wall Street Journal underlined that just recently in this article. Your electric bill is rising faster than inflation, mostly because of the jump in natural gas prices. So the Wall Street Journal concurs. Natural gas deliveries to power plants will cost 50% more this summer than last year. And they talk about the export. The more we export gas, the more the domestic price will begin to reflect the international price. So all this talk about drill, baby, drill is not about lowering prices for you. It's about getting more gas out of the ground so it can be shipped overseas to people who will pay a lot more than you're willing or able to pay, and thereby make fracking billionaires richer and richer and richer, okay? And to keep us locked in to natural gas far, far into the future, regardless of climate change, regardless of economics. It's all about power. And now we have a Secretary of Energy who is, of course, a fracking millionaire himself. So you can understand what his policies are going to be aiming at. And now the Energy Information Administration says that our liquefied natural gas, LNG, export capacity is planned to more than double by 2028. So the exporting is putting pressure on prices now, and they plan to double that exporting in the next 4 years. Okay, so do the math. Now these are more Trump Trump voters. And in fact, this is a video with some fairly horrible people who are sort of the billionaire tech bros that you read so much about, that are Elon Musk's inner circle, very Trumpy, but it would be hard to argue that they're stupid. But they're talking about some of the same information here, and with the an added wrinkle that they're talking about competition with China and the desperate need that the United States, we are in very, very serious danger of falling irretrievably behind China, irrevocably behind China, especially if we go ahead with the legislation that is currently being considered before the Senate. But listen to what these guys have to say. And again, I apologize. These are not good guys, but they're formidable guys that we need to know about.
China is moving. I mean, we've been through the numbers, but they're adding an entire United States every 18 months.
Every 18 months, yeah.
So every 18 months, China adds all of the power production capacity of the entire United States additional to their grid. We are going to see an explosion of robots. They're not going to all be humanoid robots, but like robotics allows humans to get an incredible amount of work done. Imagine having the cost to build a giant building go down by 50x. That's what this unleashes. You can see it in China. Go look at how they build bridges. It takes like 3 days to build a multi-mile bridge in China because the whole thing is automated. They do automated drilling. They do automated mining. They do automated building. All of that shit. If we unleash that capacity in the United States, we can build things that are economically productive for America. All of this gets unleashed. The technology is here today. The only thing that's missing is the power.
We want this. David, I would just then ask folks, go talk to like Duke Energy, go talk to Constellation Energy, go talk to the drillers, but they'll all tell you the same thing. If you want a nat gas turbine, we have to wait until 2030. Why? Because China owns them all. They make them all. So if you say, hey, Chamath, drill, baby, drill and use nat gas, and I say, okay, I'm waiting in line for 5 years to get a turbine. So then it's like, okay, what can I do? Nuclear? I can't, because that'll take till 2035.
Okay, I'll just add one thing. He's not right that all the gas turbines are coming from China. General Electric makes gas turbines. Mitsubishi makes gas turbines. Siemens out of Europe makes gas turbines. But the story is the same everywhere. They're overbooked, and they're not going to expand production because at the very top level they know that gas is inherently limited because of climate change. They see it coming, they know it's coming, and they're not going to put billions and billions of dollars into new production facilities that could be stranded assets in 10 or 15 years. That's why we have the shortage. Now I'm going to go to someone who is a genuine good guy, one of the good guys, Senator Brian Schatz, Democratic senator from Hawaii, and we know he's a good guy because he was born in Ann Arbor. So he's good people. And I want you to listen to what he has to say. This is from a interview on Midas Touch just maybe 2 or 3 days ago. So this is very current. But listen to what he says, totally on the opposite side of the political spectrum, and, compare and contrast.
I think we're going to see electricity shortages. And the thing, I've been involved in the climate fight for all of my adult life. It's really the reason that I got involved in politics. But, there were, to be fair, over many decades, there were times where we had to make a trade-off between the priority of protecting the planet and reducing the impact of climate change and energy abundance. And that has flipped. Since we passed that big climate bill, we have embraced energy abundance. We have embraced the idea that we can solve the planetary crisis and reduce people's prices. And the funky thing about what they're doing right now in this terrible bill is that they're going to create shortages. It's true that we're going to need a lot more electricity because over time the economy grows, but also because of AI and some other requirements. It's also true that nuclear and geothermal have some real potential over the many, many years. We cannot get nuclear energy online in the next 5 to 8 years, even in the most optimistic scenario. Likewise, geothermal with some notable exceptions. If we are going to meet the energy demands of the next probably 3 to 8 years, wind and solar are the things that you can basically just lay down and plug into any grid anywhere. And that's the way we're going to meet our energy demands. If we don't do that, there will literally be a shortage of electrons and prices will go up everywhere. So we don't have to argue that we should sacrifice to save the planet. Right now, energy abundance, cheaper energy is consistent with saving the planet. And I think people need to start thinking about it in those terms.
I think Senator Schatz puts that exactly correctly. And those of us who are advocating for clean energy need to maybe get out of the mindset, if we were ever in it, that, gee, please let me just put up a solar panel because I want to hug a tree and sing Kumbaya. We're talking about national security and the survival of our economy here and being able to turn our lights on at a price that we can afford. Those are the stakes here. I mean, climate change is, of course, my overriding priority, but we're at a stage now where this is, if we shut down the transition to clean energy now, we're going to be literally shutting down the U.S. economy at a time when China is pulling away from us, and we're going to lose our economic position in the world with unforeseeable consequences. So this bill is before the Senate. The big beautiful bill, you may have heard of it, is a massive program that is before the Senate right now, is passed by the House. The version that was passed by the House removes a whole lot of incentives, not just for solar and wind, but also for building batteries, moving along the transition to EVs, any number of energy-related and vital projects. This bill is a worst case scenario as it came out of the House. So, but there are a number of senators who have serious misgivings, and 5 Republican senators wrote to Majority Leader John Thune this week asking that some of these incentives for clean energy transition be brought back into the legislation. And if the credits are curtailed, as they might be, then Democrats and progressive groups are going to start targeting vulnerable representatives and vulnerable senators. So if you live in an area where you have a Republican representative, or if you live in a state where you have Republican representatives or a senator, or if you know anybody that does, you should be contacting those people. And even if you have a Democratic representative, you should be letting them know that this is a high priority for you, because they need to hear that. And you may think, well, with all this that's going on at the Trump administration, that the oil industry, the oil and gas industry, must be very happy. They must be rubbing their hands together in glee and gratitude. But actually, they're not doing very well either, because this administration is equal opportunity incompetence all the way around. The Bloomberg recently reported that half of the 20 worst performing stocks on the S&P 500 are in oil, gas, and petrochemicals. And because his inconsistency and unpredictability have caused so many people to predict a recession, crude oil prices have plunged. And so at the same time that he's telling people to drill, baby, drill, they're barely at break-even level with the price of oil that they've been getting, and they're going to be paying higher prices on steel and aluminum. So it's getting to be like a no-win situation for a lot of these companies. And the Dallas Federal Reserve did a survey of oil executives about a month ago, and some of the responses were like this one: the administration's chaos is a disaster for the commodity markets, meaning oil. I have never felt more uncertainty about our business in my entire 40-plus year career. So the oil and gas industry is taking a beating as well, and we're getting even more uncertainty introduced now that we've got a war going in the Middle East. And just today, President Trump said he'll make a decision as to whether we get directly involved in 2 weeks. When is the last time you heard President Trump say, I'm going to do something in 2 weeks? The uncertainty is off the scale. So to say that we're at one of the most important hinges of history right at this very moment is kind of understating the case. This is a moment like no other. And we don't know which way it can go. And the people that are in charge are some of the most incompetent and dishonest and just truly awful that have ever occupied positions of power in the United States. One of them is Chris Wright, the Secretary of Energy. I mentioned him before. He is, of course, a fracking millionaire because, of course. But I have been keeping up on the stock price of his company, Liberty Energy, which is a fracking services company. And that company has been consistently losing money ever since the inauguration. And year to date, it's down almost 40%. Sometimes it bounces to 37 or 38, but I just checked it today. It's down 36.6%. So, a perfect example of what's happening across the oil and gas industry. So, these guys are evil, yes, but they're not evil geniuses. And the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. And a coordinated and intelligent pushback against them can work, can have results. So we shouldn't despair that somehow these guys have completely got everything wired because they don't know what they're doing. And that's really the big danger right now is that we are nobody is at the helm. Um, so uh, drawing this part of the presentation to a close, I'm working with a group of people across the political spectrum, including the Conservative Energy Network, the Michigan Conservative Energy Forum on the right, and also the Sierra Club and some other groups on the left. And we're doing this thing called Michigan Homegrown Power, myhomegrownpower.com. And what we're trying to do is get people who are interested in the clean energy transition and kind of educate them how they can get involved in local battles around siting solar, wind, and batteries in their area. And so if you go to that website, you can click on the Join Our Mission button, and you can sign up to watch like a 1 hour Zoom video that kind of gives you all the basic information you need to get involved in some of these local proceedings. And it's starting to work. We're starting to see people show up in support of clean energy where 3, 4 years ago, the only people who would show up were these Facebook frenzied MAGA true believers that were just completely off the wall, but absolutely intimidating to local officials. But it's incredible how much of a difference it makes if 4 or 5 well-informed, thoughtful people show up and just act like adults. It's amazing how you can change the tenor of a whole room, and it's happening right now. I'm really excited about how this is progressing. So if you have any mind to get involved in this, myhomegrownpower.com, check it out. Now, everybody's going to have a different reason for doing that. Everybody's got a different motivation that gets them out of bed in the morning. This is mine. It's my grandson, first grandson, Finnegan. And I'm very concerned about the world that he's going to inherit. And I can't sleep unless I do something about it. So that's what all of these proceedings are about. That's what all these presentations are about. And if you want me to come and talk to any group, I'm especially interested in talking to rural groups, rural progressives, rural Democrats, but I'll talk to any garden club, Chamber of Commerce, JCs, whatever it might be. I'll come and talk in your kitchen if you can get 2 or 3 friends to show up. So think about what your resources are. Think about what would you do? Think about any other critical moment in history and ask yourself what you would have done. And then look in the mirror and realize that you're doing it now. So consider consider your resources, consider your opportunities, and think about playing a part because there's no reason to wait around, folks. This is kind of it. Uh, if you want to see more stuff like this, sun101.org, wind101.info. Think.blog is my blog. I try to update that almost every day. You can follow me on Blue Sky and on Facebook. And definitely reach out if you have any questions. And thank you all so much for attending this Zoom. I know we've got time for Q&A here, so I'm hoping that I might have raised a few questions in some people's minds. So let me know. I'm going to stop screen share here for a moment.
Thank you. Really terrific as always. So we're going to stop this. Peter, will stop the screen share. There you go.
There we go.
If anybody has any question, you can either unmute yourself, or even better, there's a little hand raise there, and if you click on that, you can. I'll be able to see you and call out on you if you have any questions, and you can unmute yourself and ask it. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand.
I'm hearing literally crickets.
That's my approach.
Okay.
Any thoughts or questions? Just anybody.
That is too on the nose. Okay. All right. Well.
Joan, do you have a question? You can go ahead and unmute yourself. I can see you raising your actual hand.
Yeah, I couldn't find the hand because I wasn't watching when you were saying. Sorry. Okay, so this is kind of off, but not. For line 5, they are taking, again, I guess it's the, I forget, the Corps of Army engineers are reviewing it and everything. But the same argument could be made for, against that, having the line 5 because of the steel and all the products that go into making the line 5. And if they're figuring they're not going to be able to build nuclear for 5 to 8, I think there is projections for that line 5. It shouldn't come to fruition until, years from now. So, but as far as making the argument that the products aren't available to build the line, would that be an agreeable argument? Is that true? Would that be something to
Well, I think it's an easy assumption that if we maintain 50% tariffs on aluminum and steel, that can't be good for any kind of industrial project like that. The line 5 thing is all by itself such a huge issue that I have almost deliberately kind of it's like I have to cut it off somewhere because it's all too much. And there's probably people on this Zoom that know way more about line 5 and what the progress of that is right now. But you're right, it's going to take several years, and I think that was one of the arguments against building the tunnel is that because it's going to take several years, it means you keep that line pumping underneath the straits for that much additional time, and that vulnerability extends. But so what I'm trying to, I guess my approach is to kill the demand for those products by trying to get as much clean energy moving as possible so that people are moving away from petroleum products. And we're getting pretty close to peak oil demand, certainly globally, because China demand is going down, or at least it's leveling off. And that's huge. Now, we're pretty close to that in the United States, and that's one reason why the oil industry is so solidly behind the Trump administration, because they know that this transition is coming and it's existential for them. And they know that Trump is their guy. He will do anything that they ask him to do. And so uh, we're we're a little bit on the ropes right now, but we're just going to have to be like Muhammad Ali and rope a dope and strategize and come out of this somehow. But yeah, all, pipelines, liquefied natural gas export facilities, natural gas power plants, but also, wind turbines and to some degree solar and stuff like that are affected by these tariffs. So the auto industry, I mean, we're EVs or no EVs, we're in danger of killing our auto industry right at a moment where China has made the right investments, they've made the smart investments. Our industry pioneered the electric vehicle in 1995 or whatever it was and decided to back away from it. Now they're going to be very fortunate to survive the next decade. And those tariffs and these policies aren't helping them.
And Peter, let me just jump in here on about line 5. I co-founded the Oil and Water Don't Mix campaign, and I'm pretty involved still. So this U.S. Army Corps of Engineers study that's going on right now, it's pretty much a sham process. When they did their scoping comments back in 2022, we turned out over 77,000 people, and the vast majority of those comments that we said when we talked to the U.S. Army Corps, we said, you need to look at alternatives, including shutting down the pipeline. Like if you're not talking about an alternative about shutting down the pipeline, then you're not being legitimate. And of course, that was not on the table. When they came out with their draft impact statement a couple of weeks ago, it is, we think that it should be built and we're, comment on this thing. And so that they automatically took off, they're ignoring the comments of the people who say, let's not build more fossil fuel infrastructure, especially through the middle of our Great Lakes, but let's not build any fossil fuel infrastructure because we have to start dismantling it. So participating in that process is a bit of a waste of time because they're going to rubber stamp it. It got put on the fast track by the Trump administration to bypass all environmental regulations if possible. And that's what they're doing. So if you want to go to one of those, you can go to Oil and Water Don't Mix and see there's one more public comment period that's open. It's a waste of time because they're not going to listen to us. The only chance we really have to keep this pipeline, the tunnel from being built, is to contact Governor Whitmer and ask her to have EGLE, the Department of Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, to not approve the permit that Enbridge needs from that department. So that's our really only public pivot point left, is to have Whitmer tell EGLE not to approve that permit. And so that's where we're putting all of our effort. There's a court case out there that Dana Nestle's pursuing because it violates the pipeline itself violates the public trust of Michigan, but there's not a lot that the public can do about that process. So in the comments here, Mike Foley asks, are the states with high reliability from utility scale renewables pairing the developments with battery storage?
Oh, what a great question. It's phenomenal, actually. Excuse me? It's phenomenal what is happening with battery storage. Battery storage is absolutely, I don't want to say exploding, but it is rising rapidly, exponentially across the country, and in particular, interestingly enough, the two states where it's really starting to have an impact are, number one, hippy dippy California, but also redneck good old boy Texas are the two states where there is, ironically, the greatest uptake of not just clean energy, but batteries. And what we're seeing in these states is that once you get a certain penetration of batteries on the grid, you almost start to get like a phase change. Like the grid starts to operate in a different way than what it has historically. And see if I can describe this to you, or maybe if I can see if I've got I guess I'm not going to be able to pull up a graph on that. So if you can imagine like a bell curve, okay, and this is like solar production during the course of the day. So, a lot of sun at noon and less, in the evening, less in the morning. And as you get more and more solar, and we see this in California, up here at the top, there's a whole lot of solar and wind that is more than what is required to run the state. Now, some of this you can sell, but the more batteries that you bring on, then you start storing this energy. Up until recently, a whole lot of this you would shut down the windmill or you would shut down the solar farm because you had nothing to do with this energy. So it's called curtailment, and it was just wasted. But now they're starting to store this energy from the peak time of the day, and then with the batteries, then they start using it during the shoulder times of the day. So particularly in the evening, when there's sort of a peak, when everybody gets home and starts cooking and turns on the TV and all this kind of stuff. This has always been in where a whole lot of gas is needed to kind of step up and fill in this gap. But now less and less gas is being used because more and more batteries are filling that in. And the batteries do it better and cheaper and more reliably than the gas. So the batteries are starting to outcompete the gas. And this is happening in Texas too. And so both of these grids are now objectively, verifiably, numerically becoming more reliable because of both the build out of clean energy, particularly solar, but also the batteries. In fact, I toured a battery company here in Michigan, in Clare, Michigan, yesterday. And these guys are working on a whole different technology from the lithium ion batteries that we hear about. They're using lead acid batteries, but not the kind that are in your car. It's like a whole different concept. And because they're talking about storage is basically, it sits on a concrete pad, so weight doesn't matter. So you can use lead. And apparently it works really well. It's very safe. There's no fire danger like there is with lithium, although that is getting pretty well controlled. And so there are literally dozens and dozens of different battery concepts out there that are starting to come online, and some of them are going to give much more long-term storage than what we have so far. The lithium batteries are 4 to 8 hours, but some of these different technologies will store and then release energy for up to 100 hours. That's a week. So we're starting to see these battery technologies really change the character of the game here and make renewable energy into something that looks more like base load. And that's what we were talking about with these battery executives yesterday. Base load solar based on energy storage, ubiquitous energy storage. So it's huge. And it's something to watch because it's expanding exponentially now, and it's going to change everything sooner than most people think.
If thanks, Peter. There's a really good YouTuber. There's a channel called Just Have a Think,
Oh
where
yeah.
where they go really deep into our climate issues, including battery technology, and it's all the latest stuff. I just put the link in the chat if you want to
Oh, good.
grab that real quick and check out some of the videos. It's really fantastic.
Highly recommended. Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with one last question from Linda Dunnigan. Linda asks Peter what your thoughts are on restarting the Palisades nuclear plant and the ton of money being poured into it.
Yeah, it's a ton of money. And just to kind of frame that for you, in case anybody tells you about uh, clean energy being reliant on subsidies, the Palisades nuclear plant it got a $300 million grant from the Michigan legislature. And Governor Whitmer supported that. And I'm not going to ding her for it because she's one of our biggest allies. $300 from the Michigan legislature, 1.5 billion in loan guarantees from the Department of Energy Loan Programs Office, and then and then they went out in the market to find off-takers for the electricity. That electricity is going to go to two electrical co-ops. One is Wolverine that you have in northern Michigan, and the other is one that I believe is down in Indiana. And Wolverine got I believe it was a $600 million grant or loan from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to buy that electricity. So now you're up to something like $2 billion or more in subsidies to bring that plant back online, above and beyond, the merits of it. Palisades is a plant that had a very troubled early history in the 70s and 80s with a lot of problems with their steam generators and corrosion issues that were kind of generic to a lot of the nuclear plants of that time. I went to a presentation by the Holtec company that are the ones that are bringing it back online. They claim that they are on schedule and under budget, which would be remarkable if true. Um, I guess like I said, I think that progressives have to be real careful not to get into our traditional circular firing squad configuration on this issue. So I tell my uh, anti-nuclear friends, um, help me to cite more clean energy because I believe really that clean energy is going to just simply outcompete nuclear energy over the coming decade or two. If we get it cited, if we get it in place. I tell my pro-nuclear friends, help me cite clean energy because no matter how fast we go on nuclear, we aren't going to get enough nuclear online to make a difference, certainly to climate change, not in the coming decade when we really need it. So rather than wring our hands about Palisade, I mean, it looks like it's coming online. It looks like that's going to happen. And our representatives and our governor have made those decisions. They're spending that money. And I can only hope and pray that it works. Um, I, I have I have in general faith in engineers that are trying to do the best that they can do, but the history of the nuclear industry is fraught, and it does not it does not give one a whole lot of confidence. But no matter which way you look at it, we've got to get more solar and wind in the ground. Otherwise, there will just be more and more. Nuclear plant will be the only place that we can turn. And these newer nuclear plants, because this same company is planning to build 2 small modular nuclears at that Palisades site. So-called small. They're each in, I believe they're like 300 megawatts apiece. And those would be presumably going online sometime in the mid 2030s. But that power is going to be quite expensive. It's going to be at least double the price of what the best solar and wind are right now. So, if we want electricity prices to stay down, we need to get as much clean energy on the grid as possible. And the last thing I'll say is this administration claims to be very pro-nuclear, but they are cutting the budget for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that is critical to getting these plants sited. And they're cutting the budget, they're gutting the Department of Energy loans program that made that loan to Palisades and is making those loans for a lot of these modular nuclear projects. And so they're eviscerating the very instruments by which they would achieve the goals that they claim to have. So it's another example of how this administration doesn't know what it's doing. It has no coordination. It is stumbling itself and its own worst enemy at every turn. So does that help, Linda? Probably doesn't help.
I think Linda just got out a noose.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Sorry.
That was I thought it was very interesting as always, Peter. Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us, and thank to everybody for joining. This is a real fraught time right now, and Peter used that word, and it stuck in my head. We have to double down, and we've got to do what we all can do. So please get involved in these fights. Please show up when they talk about clean energy in your area and advocate for it. Do the things that you need to do, because now is the time, right? So yeah. Thank you so much again, and we will see you on the next one. We're going to put this online so that everybody can watch it, and that didn't join us today, but really appreciate your involvement. Thank you. And
thank you, Bill, for all your work. You've just been a rock in all of this. Really appreciate you and everybody up there. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.